This is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow. I'm Seth Merrow. Thanks for joining us. Just wrapped up the Handicappers Report, and in between Handicappers Report and Racing Across America, you saw Al Maktoum Challenge Round 3, and it was the favorite, Salute the Soldier, getting it done pretty convincingly. Came around the turn, and you thought, man, are these other horses going to make a challenge? No, they weren't. I had it 8, 3, 6, and 11 under the wire, but hold your tickets and check the official results. But the winner was Salute the Soldier, again, the betting favorite there. 10:30, we will have final race on the card today, Meydan in Dubai, the Nad El Sheba Turf Sprint. $228,000 up for grabs for a field going 6 furlongs on the turf. And again, we'll get you that one at about 10:30. Want to thank our friends at Gulfstream for their sponsorship of this program, some of the programming and events here. They have a nice day down at Gulfstream today when we went over the card Handicappers Report. Nice stakes down there, but all around the country. Tampa Bay Derby and supporting undercard stakes down at Tampa Bay. Santa Anita Handicap, San Filippo, Kilrow out at Santa Anita in Southern California. And in New York, the Gotham and some undercard stakes. And we will talk about those New York and Southern California stakes on the show today. A little bit later on, Jon White from Santa Anita joins us for their stakes card, which again, Buster. But we're going to kick things off with an interview we taped yesterday with our friend Anthony Stabile from the New York Racing Association. Going to take a look at the Gotham and the undercard stakes down at Aqueduct on Saturday afternoon with the Big A, Anthony Stabile. That is up next. Happy to be joined now by our friend Anthony Stabile. You see him doing the pregame every racing day down in New York, NYRA, Aqueduct this time of year. It's a big day at Aqueduct on Saturday. Okay.
So Danny, no, it's the James Kilrow, right? That's it. You got it.
Oh, the Jimmy Kilrow.
Jimmy Kilrow.
Why do they call him Jimmy? His name's Frank E. How big? I was going to ask John that, but I thought we'd get another 10 minutes.
I didn't know what the racing, and then spring would start up, and this would be one of those steps along the Derby.
Wanted words. That was like, now I got to cut them off. I can't ask them what.
With the Gotham still have, and this year, a very fun version. Before we get into that race and the New York step along the Derby Trail, let's go back to last week a little bit and just your thoughts on the 3-year-old scene in general. But last week, to come back, I thought was impressive. But down in Florida, greatest honor was that come from behind effort was good as well. A couple of weeks ago, I thought Mandaloon was good at the fairground. What are your thoughts at this point on the Derby Trail?
Yeah, I started my 6th year at Vegas inside with my Derby left the Beal 7. And I couldn't get past the central quality and top of it off that win last week. I don't think he liked that racetrack. I don't think he was comfortable inside. Just in the slot, I don't think he had any trouble being inside horses. But once he got outside, he rolled. It was a fantastic comeback. Keep in mind that race was postponed a couple of weeks, so Brett Cox had to keep him going and keep him fresh. The importance for a race, especially a comeback off of a big chunk of time, 3.5 months, is a long enough time. And then you got to keep him going another 2 weeks. With a big effort, I would assume in the bluegrass to a season. But his big fresh seems like the Brad, everything was on the table. So April 3rd, April 10th press. So we'll see what he does. Greatest honor was fantastic. The problem with greatest honor is he looks like he's close over the horse that cannot be in between her inside the horse. That's the problem. It's not a problem now when you are the boss over the horse that you're going to dominate at the mile 16 and the mile 8. That's one thing with this pedigree by Tappan, and he's out of the half, the Jazz over Greg Richards. They'll go all day. Problem is, in these big bulky fields, you get further down the trail and then into the Triple Crown races, you can't have it until you feel like not being able to run inside horses. You have a little bit of a target on your back. But yeah, nice bunch so far. I'm impressed with what I've seen.
Yeah, very much. Today, besides the Gotham, we're on the Derby Trail down in Florida. That's going to be fun. Out in Southern California, particularly the 2 Papa runners. Excited to see what they do up in San Felipe. jump into the Gotham. Great free event in New York on Saturday afternoon, $300,000, the one-turn mile. I pulled up the Nyquist from last November on the Breeders' Cup weekend out at Keeneland. We'll look at number one, highly motivated, get it done for Chad Klarovich. Hasn't been seen since that race. It was a little bit of a layoff. There's a stretch out on Saturday. I tilted in that direction, but it's an interesting race. The Capo King, having won the Jerome Kuback and third, the Withers last time. Freedom Fighter and White the Slate both coming from Southern California for Bob Baffert. White the Slate for Doug O'Neill. Chad Klarovich also have Crowded Trade. Could make an argument for that one off the career debut win. I think it's a field of 8 and a fun field in here. Here's Austin Dow.
Yeah, I think Chad Brown's going to win the Gotham. I'm not sure which one it's going to be. Highly motivated. You mentioned that Nyquist. That was a big effort for him. He passed horses on that track that was kind of, that we found out over the course of the next couple of days. The two Breeders' Cup days, real kind of speed, and it was kind of inside. You know what? He moved off to the rail and went 3 wide and rolled by those horses and got a good time. Should hit him right between the eye. He should get his 30 points or be gone. His way to get his 30 points. I think he's going to take a good trip. There's some speed in here with Atlantic Road. That was kind of what was done. Obviously, Capo King, Freedom Fighter coming into Baffert. You don't reach out for Kendrick Carmouche. You come into California. If you Doug O'Neill, you don't know when I'm putting Mike to sleep on or close to the despite the points or something and all. So, I think highly motivated to get the setup. I'm going to say that we've got some nice performances in that group. I don't know how many of them were better than Crowded Trade's debut. I really liked this horse's debut. It looked like he didn't know what was going on when the gate opened the first, half mile, first 5, 7 horses. Capo King's a nice little story. Harry Wine does a good job with a small string. He was good in the Jerome. I got the Pollard Jerome in the mud here at the Big A. I just think it was distance limitations a little bit last time. He'd be the third horse in for me. The problem is there are 2 or 3 in here that are just faster than him early. His best races have been when he controlled on the front end, and that doesn't appear to be in his future later on today.
Yeah, it's a very intriguing field. It's a fun field. We'll see how it plays out. Klarovich has got a couple of live runners after in there as well. All right, one race earlier, it's the Heavenly Prize. Interested to see your thoughts here because I pulled up that allowance optional claimer from February 3rd, the return of Lake Avenue. And I'll go back to 2019 when she won the Demoiselle, and I thought, Joe Mott and Dolphin are going to have a really nice 3-year-old filly. And she just offered up nothing in her 3-year-old season, it seems like. But the 4-year-old comeback on Gulfstream last stretch run, Lake Avenue will be the number 6 horse here. I thought this was an impressive comeback, and maybe she's ready to validate what we saw in that 2-year-old season. So I went in that direction, but I felt thankful from Todd Fletcher, who was a real player here too. Portal Street maybe a little bit interesting, go to the race 2 back and then go for 1. Your thoughts in Heavenly Prize?
The feel from my favorite karaoke song. Will the real Lake Avenue please stand up? The 2-year-old and 4-year-old versions will handle these and handle these with ease. The 3-year-old version will get nothing. Who's going to show up? I don't know which one's going to show up. I'll tell you what. For the first half mile of the return, at Gulfstream, it looked like the 3-year-old version was there. The second half of that race, the 2-year-old version showed up. She was good. She was really good at Gulfstream that time. And if she follows that path, she's going to be just fine in this race later on today. What do you do with Thankful cutting back? I don't know what you do with Thankful cutting back. She's running well on the flat miles. She's able to offset Mrs. Danvers back at Belmont last September. But now going that mile in front of me, she seems a little more comfortable going the 9 furlongs. I'm going to tell you the horse that I think is a little bit. I picked Lake Avenue. The one Gone Delivery, the claims he starts fast by Rob Atkins by the way. And Eric Cancel, the way she got claimed, she was beat 4 to 5. And she looked like she was going to be forward to play. She didn't break that well, and she didn't run too fast. Last time out, she didn't make the lead. But Eric Cancel jacked her out of there. And if you look at her race, her best races are when she is forwardly placed and aggressively ridden early. I think you just got to stay on top of this, though, to watch the replays. And I think Eric figured that out last time. Now she's gone inside today. She
little bit earlier, the Tom Pool Great Free event, a couple $100,000 for the sprinters. And another race where I'll be interested to see your opinion, because I could probably point at 4 of the field of 6 at least, and I would have kind of an equal level of confidence. I tilted slightly towards Pete Play Call. I think Speed Pass, it seems like over the past, I don't know, 5 years or maybe a little bit longer, any sprinters coming from the West Coast to New York, you have to pay attention to. So Speed Pass Pepper is interesting to me, and Share the Ride clearly. Boy, I mean, this horse just doesn't miss a chance. But I tilted, as I say, slightly towards Pete Play Call. Which way are you going?
You had me on that until you brought up Share the Ride. We'll get there. I wouldn't be surprised if any of these 6 points, right? Okay. Not surprised. I landed on Pete's Play Call. He loves Aqueduct, he likes the distance. I think he'll work out the right trip behind the faster horses, again, like Hatton Farm and Chateau. I think he works out the right trip on the Jorge Market. Yeah. My biggest opinion in this race is I don't like Share Ride. I'm going to tell you why I don't like Share Ride.
Okay.
If you look at his form, look at his BP, he has 3 other instances on where he's come back to the right. And he was progressing with 8-12 bars in all of those races. From the 12th of September to September 6th, from the 103 to the 91. November 28th to November 29th, 101 to the 93. January 16th to January 30th, 98 to 90. And he's a horse who's better when he's forward to play. He can't keep up with Happy Farm, and he can't keep up with Chateau. He's just not fast enough. He's nowhere near fast enough. So now, he's got to pass horses. I think there are better horses to pass that pass than him. So he's going to be one of the favorites. I don't want anything to do with this farm. I'm using Pete's Play Call, Speed Pass, a little Wendell Palm. I think Pete's Play Call works out the right trip, but I think he has enough, and he has the rail, that he's the first one. Falling off the pool. I'll end with Pete's Play Call a little, but that's on the farm.
Yeah, I think it's a really contentious race. All right, one race earlier, more stakes action, kicking off the stakes action, the Busher Invitational, $250,000 up for grabs for the 3-year-old fillies going the 1-turn mile. I took a little pop with Mo Desserts, but I think Search for Zones from Clairwich and Chad is interesting, and Miss Brazil from the rail. I heard you and Andy talking on the pregame on Friday. You mentioned Tony Guthrow, firing as the Tony Guthrow of old, and that makes Miss Brazil very dangerous. Your thoughts on the Bush?
Yeah, it does. Miss Brazil could be tough. We'll see how much pressure Moses Dirk puts on her. I went to my man now, I'm downstate today, so I won't bring it no big time. But I think the grass is losing my man Louis Lavanaro.
Okay.
It's going to run a big race in this Busher. She gets some speed. I think a filly like her, who really likes to settle in the one run, will benefit. That's not to say the mile and 8 is something she's no longer do, because I do believe it is. But I think with the blinkers on last time, a little bit, and it kept her closer to the soft pace, we could take half the staff today. And I think she takes the right trip. So I'll her Miss Brazil and Mo Deserve make a lot of sense. Search is all. This is another race. I think you can make it for any of the 6 fillies. Well, Mischief has come back. For single partner, 1-2 in a row. Now she's coming back in a couple of weeks and taking on some companies.
Yeah, come back to me and I'll send it to John.
Another last time. They're the outliers. The other 4 wouldn't surprise me. I'll try to guess it's Lou. She's not only be the best fight, but she should get the best shot.
Yeah, and I think you will get a nice little price on that. Yeah, tomorrow, but double it up this summer up in Sarasota. Save it, actually celebrate this
It
one
was-
in yeah.
It was 23 last week. I don't know how much more I can get to know that. Losing a spot of 20 hours.
But regardless of that situation, really nice day Saturday down at Aqueduct with the Gotham and the undercard stakes. And Anthony, as always, we appreciate you joining us and taking a look at those and kind of setting the table for Saturday afternoon. Appreciate the visit. We'll talk again.
You got it now.
Anthony Stabile, Aqueduct,
Thanks to Anthony Stabile for taking the time yesterday to sit down and go over the stakes card at Aqueduct on this Saturday afternoon. Big day highlighted by that Gotham. Looking forward to it. Big day out at Santa Anita too, and I'm going to jump right in so we get the first part of Jon White before the Dubai. Dubai's about 12 minutes away, but we talked to Jon yesterday, and because of the length interview and the fact that we have this Dubai race in there, we kind of did part one and part two. So I'll just lead into part one of the Jon White interview, and then we'll come back from that, lead you into this Dubai race at about the bottom of the hour, and then continue on with Jon White after that. So again, caught up with Jon yesterday to talk the stakes action out at Santa Anita. Jon White is the morning line odds maker out there, had some great opinions on the stakes races and more. So up next, Jon White.
Joined now by our friend Jon White, the morning line odds maker out at Santa Anita. Of course, a big afternoon on Saturday at Santa Anita, highlighted by the Santa Anita handicap, big cap, and Santa Anita for the hero, some other stakes races as well. Jon, good morning.
Good morning, Seth.
Happy to have you on board to talk stakes action on Saturday at Santa Anita. Before we get into the races themselves, give us a little update. What's your weather going to look like on Saturday afternoon?
Looks like it's going to be absolutely beautiful. So beautiful weather, so we are very thankful for that. We should be fast and firm.
Let's kick off right into it and get into the Santa Anita handicap and work our way backwards. Maxfield to me has looked good in the two starts on Fairmount since its comeback. So I think the race goes through Maxfield. Express train is interesting, independent call is interesting. But a horse went out in my mix, and I thought I'd pull up a replay just to let people see. The San Antonio, a couple starts back with Kiss Today Goodbye. Kiss Today Goodbye. And we'll get it done. Again, it's 3 races back. Subsequently, 4 performances in the Pegasus and Golf Street. Let's just spin over to the Santa Anita track. Mike Smith in the saddle this day, back in the saddle on Saturday. I thought Kids Today Goodbye. If you're going to play around a little bit in the race, you can maybe go in that direction. I think the race, for me, goes through Maxfield. But I thought Kids Today Goodbye was a little bit interesting for taking a look at this win a couple starts back. Your thoughts on the big guy?
Well, I made it Maxfield the 8-5 favorite on the morning line, and I think he is a vulnerable favorite in terms of, I think he will be overbet. And look, he's a good horse, he's undefeated, he certainly is the horse to beat in this race, as you pointed out. I mean, the race, you said it, the race goes through him. And I'm very pleased that he has been sent to California for the Santa Anita handicap, because he lends some quality to a race that has suffered in recent years vis-a-vis its position on the calendar with races like the $20 million Saudi Cup and the Pegasus World Cup and the Dubai World Cup. Santa Anita handicap has really fallen off in recent years, and so far to such an extent that I've been worried that it's going to drop to a grade 2. And it's a historic race. It's got a tremendous history. It one time was the biggest race for older horses in the country, and it would have just broken my heart to see this race downgraded to a grade 2. With the quality of the field, not only with Maxfield, but the entire field this year, at least I feel that it's got a better shot to hold on to its grade 1 ranking, and Maxfield plays a role in that. So again, I'm glad he's here. And if you're a bettor, you're glad he's here. You're shopping for a price. Now you mentioned Kids Today Goodbye, but I think you can make cases for several horses in here to maybe pull the upset. Look, Maxfield has never gone far a mile and 16. Now he's being asked to go a mile and a quarter. He's shipping across the country. And something that people don't even talk about anymore is weight, because we don't have very many handicaps anymore. And he has to carry top weight at 124 pounds. The farther you go, the more relevant weight becomes. And if you don't think that's the case, if you, instead of dragging your suitcase when you travel on its wheels, if you carry your suitcase, the farther you carry your suitcase, the more taxing that becomes. It's a matter of physics. And so Maxfield, to me, is, like I say, a vulnerable favorite here. I picked him because he is the horse to beat, but I think there are opportunities in here. Express Train, I came very close to making 5-2, but I'm sensing that there's as much respect for him yet than I have for him, because I'm always trying to handicap the betting public, not the race, in terms of the odds. So I was going to go to the 9-5 on Maxfield, but I switched to 8-5 and 5-2 and 3-1, but I think Maxfield, quite frankly, could easily go well under 8-5. Because of he is the ranked high in the nation. He is the number 4 ranked horse of the NTRA poll. And you always have to respect an undefeated horse, too. And I respect the trainer as well, Brendan Walsh. So, you know, I made him a low price in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile here a couple of years ago, and he ended up scratching from the race. But I could tell at that time he was kind of a hyped horse that people were going to be gravitating to. And I think that is the case here. If I were to go against him, I would go with Express Train off that last race, and the fact that John Sheriff is such an outstanding trainer. And I think, look, when you look at Express Train, Seth, this is a horse that early in his career was highly regarded. He was actually as highly regarded as A.P. in that, and in his maiden win, he faced a buzzsaw and 8 reins sprinting, but when they stretched him out to a mile, he absolutely wrong. And then he ran a disappointing race against 8 reins in the American Pharoah, and then he went on the shelf. So something, you know, he's a union ranked out of a mining shaft mare who, with that pedigree, you know, he's the horse, but it's not all that surprising that he would be better at this point in his career age-wise, or than he would have been as a 2-year-old or even maybe as a 3-year-old. So I think he's just blossoming now. He tipped his hand in the Malibu. He ran a big race that day to finish second against Charlatan. And, you know, look, Charlatan is one of the top horses in the world. He went over to Dubai and ran a heck of a race in defeat against the John Gosden winner, Nishawish. So I would go with Express Train, but a lot of people that like Idol, I think Idol is overrated myself, but there are a lot of people who like him with the jockey change to Joao Rosario. Independent Paul ran a respectable race in the Pegasus, and off that, a 104 buyer, I think you had him. He finished well behind Express Train in the Malibu, though, so I don't know why he's going to necessarily beat Express Train going farther. But I just have to think that it's a very interesting race. And look, just today, ran San Antonio. I think a bit of a concern here, Seth, is the fact that number 1, he was well behind Independent Paul and Pegasus, and number 2, I don't think the pace might be as to his liking in this big cap as it was in the San Antonio. I think that helped set up his late run. But a tricky aspect of the big cap, only one horse in this race is the race farther than a mile, you know, has not gone a mile. And the only horse that's gone farther is to the Magician. And I think, you know, he's kind of up against it in terms of his last race when he got rode by Express Train. So I would be surprised to see him turn the tables. But again, it's Richard Mandela who's won multiple Santa Anita handicaps. And you know, a wild card in the race is King Guillermo, because this is a horse that ran a kind of a freakish race when he won the Tampa Bay Derby, and I don't think he's been the best managed horse in history since then. He's been kind of oddly managed, but they finally were smart. When they sent him out to the Santa Anita, he ran poorly there, but they kept him here. They didn't take him back east and then ship him back out here to California. They kept him here, and they kept him here with a Hall of Fame trainer, Neil Drysdale. So Drysdale's been certainly the horse's training here in California, and I think you can throw out basically his last 2 races. Look, the Cigar Mile was off a long way off against that company, and then last time he had to ship across the country and the track was wet. So he's Guillermo, this is just all in all a very good addition to the Santa Anita handicap.
Yeah, very intriguing. I did not know what to do with Kitty Guillermo because of that promise early in the career. And as you say, a couple not so much like better than that. I didn't know what to do. And it's fresh train. Yeah, triple digit flyer that in as well as him as his one maybe an up and comer. But we'll see. Max goes. You mentioned Wade hadn't thought about that. But yeah, the might early things in the game. When it was a real consideration of more handicapping. How we don't factor that in as much, but in a race like this, all looking at 124 for Maxfield.
And again, that was part one. We split up the Jon White interview into a couple of parts because that Dubai race is about to go off, and we were anticipating that when we planned the show yesterday. It is the Nad Al Sheba Turf Sprint. The favorite currently is number 8 Royal Crusader, 6-5. Hasn't been seen, however, since June or July at Deauville. Won that race for Charlie Appleby and William Buick. So they bring this one back off a long layoff, but the betting public not concerned about the layoff. 6-5 favorite, number 8 Royal Crusade. We'll take a look at this one. We'll come back wrapping up the Dubai card. This is the last race at Meydan on this Saturday. So we'll watch this one. We'll come back after the race and get to part 2 of Jon White. Stay tuned.
A very good performance in the summer. But present to those two horses, they might just prove a tough to pass. One by one they go forwards. The easiest for them are Paula Craig Evans. Sterling work tonight as ever. So with the presence of 7 shake handout horses and 3 for Godolphin. And the over as Craig. It's all in a day's work. Next, set them up. And a promise goes forward, takes up its spot. Goes forward, this is Tani, step on reserve to your right. Moving in well, 1200 metres for the Nano Sheba Turf Sprints. Reminding us that Wildman Jack won this last year. Wildman Jackson running the Golden Sheen here at Throwback Time on the Dirt. And moving up to position is Jarlail. Perfect Crown still to come forward, Anthony Express on the line. Perfect Crown and Action Express, the last two. Look to be right now. Now Sheba Turf Sprint, they're set. Gates go back and they're racing. Action Express just a shade slow away quickly. Middle rapid towards the inside. Final Song bounced away well. Fleeting Prince also in the firing line early. The orange cap of the Nara is going forward. Out deeper is Tarnin and forward to is Yarlow. The widest horse, the Perfect Crown. Tucking in behind the Royal Crusade. They will follow by Middle Rapper, Ackland Express. The front Middle Rapper shows the way in a clump.
It's a long way back, needs to pick up. It's following the Perfect Crown. The front runner, Muda Rafa, as they go to the final 350. Over in second, Tarnine. Now coming through with Man of Promise, and over on the inside is Final Song, hitting a stride and bursting through. Final Song's gone to the lead. Now charging down the outside is Motor Farwit, but Final Song well clear inside the final 100 metres. Charging the second, Motor Farwit close quickly, but Final Song just clinging on. Off there. Final Song lasted by a head over Motor Farwit. A gap to Acklam Express, a good run. Close up was Muda Rafa, followed by Tarnine. Then came Royal Crusade. Didn't come on at all, followed by Lael. Next in was Man of Promise, then came the Perfect Crown. Behind them was Fanar, followed by Medahim, then Tarmol, Fleeting Prince, and Ektiau has put up near after last.
So the favorite Royal Crusade off the long layoff, hadn't been since July in France. There's an upset. Fairly decent prices in here. We have 13 was the winner. I think it was 13 and 6. Hold your tickets, check your numbers. But 8-1 over 13-1 in the exact. Again, is the favorite. Royal Crusade at 7-5 is beaten. Nice late run here. And hold your tickets. I said 13 and 6, but this is tight at the wire too. Comes right down. I think the 13 did hold on, but it became tight with a nice closing effort there by the second place finisher. So hold your tickets and check your results there at Meydan in Dubai, wrapping up their Saturday card. All right, let's get back into it with Jon White again. Because of the Dubai race, we split his interview up into a couple of segments. First segment, we took a look at the Santa Anita handicap, but we work our way through the rest of the stakes action on the Saturday Santa Anita card with Jon White. That's up next. One race earlier on the card, it's the Grade 1 Kilroe, mile on the grass. Always a fun race early on the American racing calendar. And this is yet another fun edition, and fun for folks in our audience because a lot of familiar faces from the New York racing scene. We have Pletcher bringing in Social Paranoia, Chad and Klarovich have Animal, Chad also has Flaves, Lee Einseidler and Bill Mott bring in Casa Creed, Ride a Comet for Mark Cassie, and Ride a Comet for Cassie win down at Gulfstream like Grade 3 is the one that intrigues me a little bit. But what are your thoughts on the Kilroe?
Well, first of all, this is probably the best race on the entire card, and I'm sure that Mr. Kilroe, and that's someone that I called Mr. Kilroe, I knew Mr. Kilroe, who was an absolute legend in terms of a racing executive, and he would be smiling at the quality of this race. I mean, top to bottom, this is just an outstanding field for this year's Frankie Kilroe Mile, who I always kind of chuckle at that because he was known as Jimmy Kilroe, but officially his name was Frankie. That's what we go by here. But this is a guy that invented the Breeders' Cup Filly Ameriturf, Seth, really, because he's the guy that came up with the idea of a race called the Yellow Ribbon. Not the Yellow Ribbon we have now at Del Mar, but the Yellow Ribbon during the Oak Tree meet at Santa Anita in the fall. That race became a world-class for Mr. Kilroe. And that race during the early years of the Breeders' Cup kind of was an extension almost of the Breeders' Cup mares. And the Breeders' Cup said, you know that race. And so they started the Breeders' Cup Ameriturf. In fact, the park kind of piggybacked on the Yellow Ribbon by coming up with the matriarch. Now, the matriarch at one time was a championship deciding type race. In fact, in 1984, the first year of the Breeders' Cup, Royal Heroine, a superstar from the East Coast trained by Woody Stevens, shipped out to California and won a stakes race the day before the Breeders' Cup when it was a one-day event. And then the next day, Royal Heroine won the inaugural running of the Breeders' Cup Mile, beating the boys for John Gosden. Those two had a showdown in the matriarch for the Eclipse Award that year. Nowadays, though, the matriarch has been shortened in distance. It's a 1-mile race. But my point is, again, that Kilroe was ahead of the curve by having that Yellow Ribbon, which is now, in essence, the Breeders' Cup Filly Ameriturf. In this race, I mean, you can go all over the place as far as, I mean, truthfully, I think anybody can win this race. Yeah. Even the longest shot that I made on the morning line at 15-1, Rush Ship. This is a horse whose speed figures in the Del Mar Mile and City of Hope Mile last year actually fit very well with everybody in this race. And he's a first-time gelding, and he's got a Hall of Fame trainer in Richard Mandel and a Hall of Fame rider in Mike Smith. This horse actually could win this race, and that's why I wouldn't make him 20-1. He could be 20 or 30-1 in here. But I think even that horse has a shot. It was very tough to make a favorite in this race. I mean, there's several that could go favorite here. When I make a 7-2 favorite, that's in essence what I'm saying. is that the favoritism's up for grabs. And right a comment I settled on, because when you look at his record, I mean, he's since coming off a long layoff, he's rattled off 3 consecutive wins. He's got a 101 buyer in his last race. And I mean, this guy is just a win for Hall of Fame trainer Mark Casse. And they've pointed for this race. And, you know, this horse just, when you go back and look at even his Del Mar Derby, or even when he got beat by Raging Bull in the Hall of Fame at Saratoga back in 2018, he ran well that day against a very tough foe in Raging Bull. So this is a top-notch horse, and so I made him the favorite. But favoritism could go to Smooth Like Straight, who has been the favorite in his last many races. But this will be his first time running against not his age group only. You know, as a 2-year-old, he ran only against 2-year-olds. As a 3-year-old, he ran only against 3-year-olds. Now he's running against everybody as a 4-year-old. So that's a bit of a question for him. But this is just a really terrific horse. And then the Roads race was lights out in the Grade 3 Thunder Road, coming off a long layoff for trainer Dan Blacker. You have to give him just a ton of respect in this race. He's won 3 out of 4 on this turf course. But that Thunder Road, if he runs back to that race, it sets the bar high for everybody in this race. I mean, we could spend an hour talking about this race, quite frankly. That's the kind of depth and quality this race has.
Yeah, I totally agree. It is a fun edition of the Kilrow, as they say, with a lot of familiar faces in there. I'll be rooting for our friend Lee Einseidler and Bill Mott and Casa Creed. I've liked that horse throughout the career, and was a decent second to ride a Comet last time out. So I found it intriguing that they shipped out there to take the shot in the Grade 1, but really a fun edition of the Kilrow. Again, a little bit earlier on the card, we have some sprinters squaring off in the San Carlos Grade 2 event. 4-year-olds and up, $200,000 up for grabs at 7 furlongs. Storm the Court, what a kind of an interesting story with that win in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and just never really lived up to that afterwards. But he comes back on Saturday, Exalted, being lightly raced for Peter Urton, I think comes in off a nice optional claiming win and gets tested in stakes company. But he's interesting to me. Brickyard Ride, an interesting player coming off a win against Calbreds in a stakes race last time. And Tigra di Slugo, or if I'm anywhere close to that, ran second behind Brickyard Ride last time in that Calbred stakes race. So he's a player as well. What are your thoughts on the San Carlos?
Well, I don't think this is the strongest of this Grade 2 event that we've seen out here, to be quite honest about it. And so here again, I think there are several win candidates in this race. I made Taggart the favorite in here, 5-2. He was the favorite last time out in the California Cup Sprint, and he ran quite well in defeat. He had a troubled trip that day. It was closing late, going 6 furlongs, and it looks like that should set him up very nicely for the longer 7-furlong trip here. And he retains the services of one of the top jockeys in the country, in Joel Rosario. So I see him as the horse to beat. On the horse to catch is certainly Brickyard Ride, who ran just a marvelous race last time, as he set fast fractions and just kept on going. And if that race had been 7 furlongs, I think he would have gotten the 7 furlongs for sure. But he might have a little tougher time in this open Grade 2 race versus a race restricted California breds. So that's something of a concern. On the other hand, he seems to really like this track. 5 starts, 4 wins in the third. So there's pluses and minuses on all of these horses. Storm the Court cutting back in distance, switching back to the dirt. But as you say, Seth, he's got a long losing streak going all the way back to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile of 2019 here at Santa Anita, and he was a 45-1 long shot the day he won. So even the day he won, it was a huge upset. Extra Hope's cutting back in distance and has the credentials to win this race for sure, but I don't necessarily think 7 furlongs is ideal for him. So it's a kind of a tricky race. You mentioned Exalted. I didn't know he was a tricky one to make a morning line. I was debating between like 6, 8, and 10, and ended up at 10. And maybe if I had to do over, I'd lower him a bit. But look, he's you don't often go optional 40 claimer to winning a grade 2, let's be frank about it. But as I said, I don't think this is the strongest grade 2 we've seen ever. So Loudmouth has run races that would get a license to win this race. So interesting race. I don't think it's a particularly strong race, but it's an interesting race, and it's a race I think if you're playing a multi-race exotic, like a pick whatever, I would go as deep as you possibly can go here. And I would make that same point on the Kilroe Mile. That these two races back to back, I would approach it one of two ways if you're playing, you know, a multi-race wager, and that is either go as close to all or use all if you can afford it, or take a stand on somebody, because if these are the type of races that if you can't single the right one, you're really putting yourself ahead of the crowd, because most people will be spreading in these races.
Yeah, it's a sequence that is going to be very intriguing to put together those kind of multi-race wagers. All right, finally wanted to go back and get some opinions. Really looking forward to your thoughts in the San Felipe. And we pulled up a replay. I went back to January 2nd, the Sham. Life is Good is going to be the number 5 and win here. But coming late, number 1, Medina Spirit. They're both Bob Baffert horses. They both are back on Saturday. Subsequent to this second place finish for Medina Spirit, that one came back and won the Bob Lewis. Last week I had Jeremy Plonk on the show, who does Countdown to the Crown, and in his Derby top 20 he had these two in the top 5, I believe, but he had Medina Spirit over Life is Good, and I asked him why, and he said, well, it's a Derby top 20, and he thinks when things stretch out mile and a quarter, Medina Spirit may be the better of the two. And so that was his reasoning. But at this mile and a 16th, I just couldn't get past that performance that we just saw. I had pulled up earlier this week the winner's circle comments from Mike Smith and Bob Baffert. Mike Smith said in that Sham, Life is Good was a little green and was looking at the infield television screen. And, you know, once Smith got past the finish line and was galloping out, the other horse came up to him, and Life is Good took off again. So I wound up again on Life is Good, Medina Spirit. We'll see as things stretch out if it does change up at all. But Life is Good so far with the 2-for-2 record, and at the mile and a 16th, I'm going to go in that direction in the San Felipe. What are your thoughts?
Well, I made Life is Good the 4-5 boarding line favorite, and I toyed with 3-5. He's very likely to go lower than 4-5, but there are options to bet against him here, so I didn't want to go too low on him in this particular situation. But I definitely see him being odds-on in this race. In other words, lower than even money. Look, Seth, racing is about opinions, and I am a huge fan of Countdown to the Crown. I think Jeremy Plonk does an absolutely phenomenal job with all the work he puts into that. But I will, putting Medina Spirit ahead of Life is Good for the Kentucky Derby. And I'm talking about not the San Felipe, I'm talking about the Kentucky Derby a mile and a quarter. Because my first point would be on that is, do you think Medina Spirit is better than Authentic? Because Life is Good so far has given every indication he's better than Authentic. He's following the same Authentic race pattern in his first 3. And his debut win was better than Authentic's, and his race in the Sham was much faster than Authentic's. So Medina Spirit better get going faster, I think, to win the Kentucky Derby against Life is Good. And that could happen. Look, Medina Spirit showed tremendous heart in the Lewis, and he's a good colt. There's no doubt about it. Gary Young picked him out for a bargain $35,000 auction purchase. I've known Gary Young for going clear back to the early 1980s. He's an outstanding private clocker, outstanding judge of horseflesh, and this has been an absolute, not home run, but grand slam for Gary Young in terms of what Medina Spirit's already done to this point. But Bob Baffert said before Life is Good ran in the Sham that he felt that this is a colt that has the raw talent of American Pharaoh, Justify, and Authentic. Now, he said raw talent because, again, that was off of a 6.5 furlong victory. And Baffert didn't even know if this horse could win around 2 turns. Well, he showed it in the sham, and yes, the margin was only 3/4 of a length, but Life is Good galloped out good after that race. In fact, he was the one in front still when they got to the backstretch. I watched that closely, and Life is Good came right back out of that race with a sharp workout, pretty quick out of that race. It was 49 and change breezing. And Seth, in Southern California, the official clockers very stingily give out this breezing. Now, it's different back east. They give out breezings all the time. But it's different here in Southern California. You rarely get a breezing. And what a breezing means here in Southern California is the horse was not asked to run at any point in the workout. The rider is sitting as still as a statue. If anything, the horse might even be under some restraint. And Life is Good, prior to his workout last Sunday, had reeled off 6 consecutive breezing workouts. I've been covering races here in Southern California since 1981. I've never seen a horse have 6 consecutive breezing workouts. It's unprecedented. And you say, well, gee, what about Authentic last year? You know, we ran the Kentucky Derby in September, not May. Authentic had exactly 1 out of 56 Southern California workouts listed as breezing prior to the Kentucky Derby. 1 out of 56. Life is Good had 6 in a row. You say, what about Justify? There's a Triple Crown winner. He was undefeated. Well, he had 17 Southern California workouts before the Kentucky Derby. You know how many were listed as breezing? 0. How about American Pharaoh, the smooth-moving Triple Crown drought-busting winner of the Kentucky Derby in 2015? He had 27 Southern California for the Kentucky Derby. None, 0, nada were breezing. So, I mean, and look, when you get a workout here in Southern California, it's almost impossible to get a bull at work, because to get the breezing, you have to be not asked at all. So how can you have a timed workout that if you're not even asked at all? 2 of these 6 breezing workouts were bullets, and 1 was the best that morning. So what I'm getting at, Seth, is we could be dealing with something very special here. And yes, he's going to have to prove the mile and a quarter that he is by Into Mischief, and I think Into Mischief has already proven that he can sire a winner of the mile and a quarter Kentucky Derby, not to mention the mile and a quarter Breeders' Cup Classic, because he did it just last year, for Pete's sakes. He did it with Authentic. So, you know, Life is Good at this point, to me, is rather head and shoulders against this group. But now he's got to continue to prove it. But based on what he's done in the morning, there is the possibility, and Seth, I have to emphasize that possibility. There's a possibility at this point that this is the best horse Baffert's ever trained. Because in the morning here. So he's just, you know, he's now. That said, San Felipe is not a weak race. This is a very strong race. And so you have to give respect to a lot of these other horses. Starting with Medina Spirit from the same barn. But I don't, you know, Life is Good, to me, more or less toyed with Medina Spirit and the sham. So I'll be surprised if Medina Spirit turns the tables. Now, Dream Shake really impressed me in his career debut. First of all, Seth, that was the race that Bezos, the height of the Moon Horse from the Baffert barn, was a heavy favorite and ran a disappointing race. But I think something went amiss with Bezos, because he looked like he was loaded for bear on the far turn and then all of a sudden empty, and has not had a recorded workout since in a month. So to me, something kind of went wrong there with Bezos. Dream Shake, though, ran like a lot of people thought Bezos was going to run. He was 8th early in the field of 9, rocketed past horses on the far turn, and continued strongly down the lane. He won by almost 5, got a tremendous buyer for his debut in 96, and an absolutely fabulous thoroughgraph number of 1. The only horses and I don't know what the Thorograph numbers were in the Fountain of Youth, but going into last weekend, only 3 3-year-olds had run a Thorograph as good as Dream Shake. They are greatest honor, and the great one who's also in this race, who got a 1 when he won the maiden race by 14 lengths last time out. And I know they've been high on the great one at the O'Neill barn from day one, because when he made it second, first of all, they started him in a stakes race, and then out of that, he ran in a tough maiden race, and I say tough maiden race at Del Mar. Spielberg was in that race after running well in graded stakes races, and that didn't bother the O'Neill clan. They threw him in against Spielberg, and the great one disappointed that day. He lost by 13 lengths, but he has really come around. How much has he come around, Seth? He could very well end up being the second favorite in this race. I made him the third favorite, but he might end up being the second favorite in the betting. And he was 33-1 just 2 starts ago in the Los Alamitos Futurity when he was a maiden and almost won that race. He came within a nose of beating Spielberg that day, so it shows you the improvement of this horse, because he lost by 13 lengths to Spielberg at Del Mar and lost by a nose to him in the Los Al Futurity. So the great one is certainly a major player in this race. Roman Centurion ran a very good race in the Lewis. He was right there in the 3-way photo finish, and Hot Rod Charlie, who ran second as Essential Quality in the Breeders' Cup Journal, was the close third in that race. And Roman Centurion actually ran for everybody in that race. He had the wide tip, so in a way, he actually ran the best race. I love his pedigree. I think he's one that could make a lot of noise, especially as he goes farther with his breeding. He's by a Belmont Stakes winner, an Empire Maker, and I think he's a quality colt, but I'm not sure about him in this particular situation, going a mile and a 16th against this field, but I him in terms of a possibility to be a serious player in going farther than a mile and a 16th, and especially maybe at a mile and a quarter in the Kentucky Derby, and maybe even better, the mile and a half of the Belmont Stakes. But as I say, Seth, life is good. To me, he's possible to come out in this race and make a real statement and defeat this field with authority. And if he does, people are going to start to realize maybe just how good Life is Good is.
Yeah, it's a fun addition to the San Felipe, and we are now in the thick of the Derby Trail. A couple of weeks ago, I liked Mandaloon down at the fairgrounds. Last week, Quality and Greatest Honor both impressed, and this weekend we have the San Felipe with the Baffert runners maybe stepping out, and then down to Tampa Bay and in New York as well. And I'll tell people, if they swing by Equidale, I have a link to your online column, and you took a look also at the Tampa Bay Derby and the Gotham, and you've been looking at some of these Derby Trail races in your online column over the past couple of months, and I think 6 for 9 so far. So if people want to check out thoughts on Tampa Bay and New York as well along the Derby Trail, the Jon White column is worth taking a look at, taking a read. Jon, as always, appreciate the conversation. It's a lot of fun, informative. Wish you a lot of good luck on Saturday. Of course, we will talk again.
Thanks a lot, Seth. And I would also mention that people interested in the Triple Crown could check out what I write every Friday for Los Angeles Times Horse Racing Newsletter. And that's easily accessible. Just Google it, Los Angeles Times Horse Racing Newsletter. John Turva is the man behind that. And for the last few years, during the Triple Crown run, which last year turned into a marathon because we switched the Kentucky Derby from the first Saturday in May to the first Saturday in September. So that was a real marathon run that I had in that Los Angeles Times newsletter. But I have my top 10 also listed there, and also write extensively about the Kentucky Derby, for instance, this week, talking about the San Felipe, the Tampa Bay Derby, and the Gotham Stakes, and a brief look back at last weekend's action of the Southwest Stakes won by Essential Quality and the Fountain Youth won by Greatest Honor. And by the way, to give you a sense again of what maybe Life is Good is, he gets a 101 Beyer speed figure when he wasn't really all out in the sham. And then you take a look at Greatest Honor, his raw Beyer speed figure, the preliminary figure that came out was 83. and they arbitrarily upped it to 89. So with an arbitrarily upped buyer speed figure, that was an 89, which pales in comparison to that 101 for Life is Good. I mean, Life is Good in his maiden win got a buyer speed figure of 91, which is higher than anything Greatest Honor has done so far. Now, Greatest Honor is like Roman Centurion in that I think, obviously, and I know Shimageki has talked about this a lot, Greatest Honor is going to be better the farther he goes, and certainly the breeding indicates that, because his dam is a half-sister to two Belmont Stakes winners in Jazzle, and one of my all-time favorite fillies, Rags to Riches. So while Greatest Honor hasn't yet reached even the 90s in the buyer department, there's certainly this upside with him with the farther he goes. And again, that is the question that we're going to have to see answered with Life is Good. But as I say, you can check out my thoughts each week, not only with my expressbet.com column, but also in the Los Angeles Times horse racing newsletter.
Yeah, I usually link to that too, so people can check that out on Equidaily as well. But again, it's so far the Derby Trail, I think, is shaping up to be a lot of fun this year. We're still in that first Saturday in May, so the calendar is playing to us this year as opposed to last year, and it's going to be a lot of fun, certainly out in Southern California on Saturday. John, again, thanks for the visit.
Thanks a lot, Seth.
Jon White, again, morning line odds maker out at Santa Anita, and they have a big stakes day scheduled on Saturday. So thanks again to Jon White for joining us, going over the stakes action out at Santa Anita. A little bit earlier, Anthony Stabile taking a look at the stakes in New York. There's also, again, a big stakes card down at Tampa Bay with the Tampa Bay Derby highlighting that card, but some nice stakes as well. And some stakes on the grass, and I just double-checked because they were expecting some weather. I just pulled up the forecast for Tampa Bay for this afternoon, and it looks like some showers into the early portion of the afternoon, and then it'll go mostly cloudy. So fingers crossed things kind of hold together down at Tampa, and you know that it plays out this way with the rain being a little earlier, and then kind of letting up as the afternoon progresses down on the west coast of Florida. But again, really great stakes all around. Santa Anita with the big cap going off at the end of the program at about 8 o'clock our time. That means we will have nighttime thoroughbred racing available tonight, so keep that in mind. You can watch and wager on that entire Santa Anita card today. Important also because there's a mandatory pay of their Pick 6 out at Santa Anita. I just pulled up their website a little while ago. They're expecting maybe $6 million in the pool for, again, and I'm not quite sure what they call theirs out there now, but their jackpot 6 wager at Santa Anita. So again, that's a mandatory pay. Another note I want to give you: tomorrow at Gulfstream, mandatory pay on the Rainbow. So today at Santa Anita, tomorrow at Gulfstream. Don't forget, this weekend is also Derby Future Pool, another one, but there's also an Oaks Pool. Brian Addo kind of alluded to it earlier when he was talking on the Handicappers Report. There's also an Oaks Derby Future double wager. If you swing by, you can stop by the Kentucky Derby Future Pool website, but if you want to pull up PPs, also go to my Equidaily website. Top of the page, I have links to the Future Pool, Derby Future Pool PPs and the Oaks Future Pool PPs if you'd like to pull them up and take a look. Both of those pools close late tomorrow afternoon. And again, the Derby Future, you're going to want to look at the results today, because that potentially is going to have maybe a dramatic effect on some of the horses, because some of the horses in the pool will be running later on today. And a good performance by a horse brings the odds down. A bad performance, maybe a bad performance that you think is sneaky good, maybe that plays into your hand as odds may bounce up. That is the more unlikely scenario. More likely a horse runs a big effort. You unfortunately don't get the odds you like. But there are horses also on the list that aren't running this weekend. They're offering some value. And as I say, I'm jumping in with all others. Currently at 9-1. I think that's going to give me a few horses getting into the gate the first Saturday in May. And horses that subsequent to this pool will make a little noise, and that's what's going to get them into the gate. So all others to me is intriguing in this weekend's pool as well. All right, I'm going to wrap it up. As always, want to thank our friends at Gulfstream for their sponsorship of this program, some of the other programming and events here on Capital OTB TV and at Capital OTB in general. Appreciate their sponsorship during the championship meet. They have a nice stakes card down at Gulfstream as well today. But again, big afternoon of racing coming up. I will be jumping on for OTB Live this afternoon. Again, probably with the first post at Aqueduct at 12:50, the pregame show and whatnot. Expect I'll probably jump in and kick things off at about 12:30 or so. Again, 12:50 post time at Aqueduct. Tampa will kick off at 12:17. They have a 12 race card down at Tampa today with the Tampa Bay Derby and the undercard stakes, but at Tampa Bay they'll kick off at 12:17 this afternoon. So keep all of that in mind. And again, we'll see you about an hour and a half or so for OTB Live on a Saturday afternoon. Thanks for tuning in this morning. We'll see you in a few.
Watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.